Commander Vex'thara of the Galactic Reconnaissance Division stared at her tactical display with the kind of expression usually reserved for watching someone lick a plasma conduit. The human designated as Marcus Webb was still moving fast. Still moving without any visible means of propulsion. "Explain to me again," she said, her voice carrying the patience of someone who had just watched their vacation plans get vaporized by a bureaucratic error. "How exactly our top-tier hover scouts are getting outpaced by a bipedal mammal with no mechanical assistance whatsoever." Lieutenant Zara Kai, her communications officer, shifted uncomfortably in her bio-gel seat. The poor thing looked like she'd rather be explaining quantum mechanics to a particularly dense asteroid. "Well, Commander, the human appears to be running. Vex'thara repeated the word like it tasted of recycled atmospheric filters on those appendages. "Those fleshy, inefficient appendages. Yes, ma'am. And he's not even wearing protective foot coverings." The silence that followed could have powered a small moon's worth of awkward family dinners. 3 of Vex'thara's finest scouts, equipped with military-grade hoverbikes capable of reaching speeds that would make a comet jealous, were currently eating the dust of a human who was apparently cosplaying as some sort of primitive land vehicle. "Status report on Scout Team Alpha," she barked, her mandibles clicking in that way that made junior officers check their life insurance policies. "Scout Crixtal reports they're maintaining pursuit at 97% maximum velocity," Zarakai replied, consulting her readings with the enthusiasm of someone reading their own autopsy report. "The human subject continues to maintain his current pace. No signs of fatigue detected." Vex'thara's eye stalks rotated independently, a sure sign she was entering what her crew had learned to call the zone of professional incredulity. It was the same look she'd worn when High Command had insisted that humans were just another primitive species during the initial contact briefings. "How long has he been maintaining this pace?" she asked, though she suspected the answer would make her question several fundamental laws of physics. 47 minutes, 18 seconds, and counting, Commander. "And our scouts?" "Beginning to show signs of equipment strain. The hover systems weren't designed for sustained maximum velocity pursuit over varied terrain." Of course they weren't. Because who in their right mind would design military equipment to keep up with a creature that apparently viewed long-distance locomotion as a hobby? The entire concept was so absurd it made her want to file a complaint with the universe's quality control department. Marcus Webb, meanwhile, continued his impossible marathon through the dense forests of Kepler 442 billion, apparently oblivious to the fact that he was single-handedly rewriting several chapters of xenobiology textbooks. His thermal signature remained steady, his breathing pattern consistent, and his speed, well, his speed remained absolutely ridiculous. "Commander," came the voice of Scout Crixtal through the comm system, sounding like he was trying to solve a particularly complex mathematical equation while riding a bucking space whale. "I need to report something unusual." "More unusual than our current situation?" Vex'thara asked. Because apparently the universe had decided that today was Challenge Everything You Know About Physics Day, the human just jumped over a fallen tree, a large fallen tree, without breaking stride. "How large?" "B, approximately 3 meters in height." Vex'thara closed her primary eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages, including one that consisted entirely of frustrated clicking sounds. "And he maintained his pace. Actually, Commander, I think he might have accelerated slightly." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the sound of Vex'thara's faith in rational physics slowly deflating like a punctured atmospheric suit. "Ma'am," Zarakai ventured, her voice carrying the careful tone of someone approaching a potentially explosive device. "Perhaps we should consider the possibility that human physiology is more robust than our intelligence report suggested." "Robust?" Vex'thara savored the word like a fine wine that had turned to vinegar. "Our intelligence reports suggested they were a moderately advanced species with typical mammalian limitations, and nothing about their biology indicated they could outrun military reconnaissance equipment." "Well, ma'am, to be fair, Our intelligence reports also suggested they were peaceful farmers and technicians with limited military applications. That was true. Evil. The same reports that had failed to mention humanity's apparent hobby of treating extreme physical exertion as a recreational activity had also somehow overlooked their tendency to turn kitchen utensils into improvised weapons and their disturbing ability to find military applications for children's toys. "Commander," came Scout Thyrex's voice through the comm, adding another layer to what was rapidly becoming a symphony of professional bewilderment. "I've got eyes on the target. He's approaching the river crossing." Finally, the torrential rapids of certain death, as the locals called it, though the translation might have been slightly dramatized. No bridge, no ferry, no obvious means of crossing. The human would have to stop, reassess, find an alternative route. This would give the scouts time to catch up and possibly restore some dignity to the situation. "Excellent," Vex'thara said, feeling the first flutter of hope she'd experienced in nearly an hour. "Maintain visual contact. He'll need to find a crossing point, which should slow him down considerably." Commander?" "Yes, Scout Thyrex, he's not stopping." "What do you mean he's not stopping?" "I mean he's not stopping. He's still running, directly toward the river." Vex'thara's hope packed its bags and departed for a more sensible universe. The river is 40 meters wide with a current that could relocate a hover tank. Surely he's not planning to. "He's jumping. Commander, he's what?" "He's jumping. Across the river. He's actually airborne right now." The bridge held its collective breath, which was quite an accomplishment considering half the crew didn't technically have lungs. Vex'thara found herself leaning forward in her command chair, as if getting 3 centimeters closer to the tactical display would somehow make the situation more comprehensible. "Status report," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He made it, Commander. Clean landing on the far bank. Still running." "Then are I." "Still running," Vex'thara repeated, her voice carrying the hollow quality of someone who had just watched their understanding of basic physics get fed through a recycling unit. "Yes, ma am. And I think he's gaining speed." "Gaining speed? Yes, ma am. Also, he appears to be smiling." "Smiling." Because of course he was smiling. Why wouldn't he be smiling? He was only defying every known law of mammalian endurance while making military-grade equipment look like children's toys. Smiling was the perfectly logical response to such a situation. "Commander," Scout Crixtal's voice crackled through the comm, "we're going to need to find an alternative crossing point. Our hoverbikes can't make that jump, and the current is too strong for a water crossing." "How long for the detour?" "Estimated 15 minutes to reach the nearest safe crossing point." "And the human?" "The human? At his current pace, he'll reach the target coordinates in approximately 12 minutes. Vex'thara slumped back in her command chair, feeling like she'd just been personally insulted by the fundamental forces of the universe. Marcus Webb, a human who apparently viewed impossible physical feats as a light morning jog, and was about to reach their classified military installation before 3 of the galaxy's most advanced reconnaissance vehicles. "Ma am," Zarakai said, her voice carrying the careful tone of someone delivering particularly bad news. "Incoming transmission from High Command." Of course there is. Because clearly the universe had decided that today's theme was comprehensive professional humiliation with a side of bureaucratic oversight. Admiral Keth Var's image materialized on the main screen, his expression carrying the kind of stern disapproval usually reserved for junior officers who had somehow managed to crash a starship into a planet that wasn't there 5 minutes ago. "Commander Vex'thara," he began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just reviewed a situation report that made absolutely no sense. "I'm looking at your tactical data, and I'm having some difficulty understanding how a single human operative has managed to outpace your entire reconnaissance team." "Well, sir, it's a rather complex situation involving what appears to be a fundamental misunderstanding of human physiological capabilities." Fundamental misunderstanding. The Admiral's tone suggested he was experiencing the same reality questioning process that had been making Vex'thara's day so special. Are you telling me that our xenobiology department missed something significant about human physical performance? It would appear so, sir. How significant? Vex'thara glanced at her tactical display, where Marcus Webb continued his impossible marathon, apparently treating the laws of physics as more of a suggestion than a rule. Well, sir, significant enough that I'm beginning to question several of our basic assumptions about mammalian biology. Commander, Scout Thyrex's voice interrupted. The human has reached the perimeter of the target zone. He's actually stopped. Stopped? Vex'thara nearly fell out of her chair. Why? He appears to be stretching, Commander, and drinking from what looks like a hydration container. Stretching. Because apparently, after completing what amounted to a marathon at sprint speed, the human's primary concern was maintaining proper muscle flexibility. Is he showing any signs of fatigue? Negative, Commander. His thermal signature indicates he's barely elevated above baseline. It's like he just completed a leisurely walk instead of a high-speed pursuit across 47 kilometers of hostile terrain. Admiral Kethvar's image flickered with the kind of static that suggested someone was having difficulty processing information. Commander, are you telling me that this human has just outperformed our best reconnaissance technology while treating the experience as a casual exercise routine? That would be an accurate assessment, sir. And he's just standing there? Stretching? Yes, sir. And I believe he's checking some sort of wrist-mounted chronometer. The Admiral's expression shifted through several stages of what could only be described as existential crisis management. Commander, I want a full report on this incident, and I want our xenobiology department to explain to me how they managed to classify a species capable of this level of physical performance as typical mammalian limitations. Yes, sir. Should I also request a review of our equipment specifications? Yes. And, Commander, sir, next time we encounter humans in the field, perhaps we should consider the possibility that our intelligence reports might be incomplete. Understood, sir. The transmission ended, leaving Vex'thara alone with her thoughts and the increasingly unsettling realization that humanity might be significantly more interesting than anyone had anticipated. On her tactical display, Marcus Webb finished his stretching routine and began what appeared to be a series of push-ups. Commander, Sarcastic said, her voice carrying the careful tone of someone who had just discovered that everything she thought she knew about the universe was wrong. The human appears to be performing some sort of exercise routine. Vex'thara repeated the words like they contained the key to understanding the fundamental nature of reality. After running 47 kilometers. Yes, I am. At speeds that challenged military reconnaissance equipment. Yes, I am. And he's doing this for fun. That appears to be the case. I am. Vex'thara looked at her tactical display, where Marcus Webb had moved on to what appeared to be a series of jumping exercises, and realized that perhaps it was time to seriously reconsider everything she thought she knew about human beings. The universe, it seemed, still had a few surprises left. Commander Vex'thara watched her tactical display with the kind of fascination usually reserved for watching a supernova implode in slow motion. Marcus Webb had now been performing what appeared to be advanced calisthenics for 10 minutes, apparently treating the classified military perimeter like his personal gymnasium. Scout Team Alpha, report, she commanded, her voice carrying the weary tone of someone who had given up trying to understand the universe's sense of humor. Still en route. Commander, Scout Crixtal replied, sounding like he was personally offended by the laws of physics. ETA to target zone is 7 minutes. The human appears to be doing handstands now. Handstands. Vex'thara repeated the word with the kind of reverence usually reserved for discussing ancient religious texts. On his hands. Upside down. Yes, I am. Very impressive form, actually. Because naturally, military reconnaissance personnel were now qualified to judge human acrobatic performances. Lieutenant Zarakai, patch me through to Dr. Blim'shar in xenobiology. I need answers, and I need them before my sanity files for early retirement. The communication link crackled to life, revealing the image of Dr. Blim'shar, whose expression suggested he was having the kind of day that made people question their career choices. His usually pristine laboratory coat looked like it had been through a small war, and his eye stalks were twitching in the way that indicated severe academic distress. "Commander," he began, his voice carrying the hollow quality of someone who had just watched their life's work get fed through a matter recycler. "I've been reviewing our human physiological data, and I'm beginning to suspect we may have made a few miscalculations." A few miscalculations. Vex'thara's mandibles clicked in what her crew had learned to recognize as the sound of impending professional meltdown. "Doctor, your reports classified humans as having standard mammalian endurance limitations and typical bipedal locomotion capabilities." "Yes, well, about that." Dr. Blim'shar's academic composure cracked like a poorly maintained hull seal. "It appears our test subjects may not have been representative of the species as a whole." "What do you mean?" "Main. Well, Commander, the humans we studied were what they called office workers. Apparently there's a significant subset of their population that engages in something called marathon running as a recreational activity." Vex'thara felt her understanding of rational behavior pack its bags and head for a more sensible dimension. "Recreational activity?" "Yes, ma'am. They voluntarily subject themselves to extended periods of high-intensity locomotion for something they call fun." "Fun." The word tasted like recycled atmospheric filters mixed with crushed dreams. "They consider extreme physical exertion to be entertainment." "That's not even the concerning part." "Commander, there's a more concerning part?" "Well, yes. It seems this particular human, Marcus Webb, isn't just a marathon runner. According to our updated intelligence files, he's what they call an ultra-marathoner." "And what exactly does that mean?" Dr. Blim'shar's expression shifted to the kind of look usually reserved for explaining that the universe had fundamentally broken down. "It means he regularly runs distances exceeding 160 kilometers. For fun." The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of Vex'thara's worldview quietly deflating. 160 kilometers. For fun. She'd seen military vehicles that couldn't maintain operational status for that kind of distance. "Commander," Scout Thyrex's voice crackled through the comm. "The human has finished his exercise routine and appears to be examining the perimeter defenses." "Examining them how?" "He's walking along the fence line, taking notes in what appears to be a small data pad." "Notes?" "Because of course he was taking notes. Why wouldn't he be taking notes? It wasn't like he'd just casually outpaced military reconnaissance equipment and then decided to conduct a leisurely security assessment." "What kind of notes?" Hard to say from this distance, Commander. But he appears to be quite thorough. He's also taking pictures." "Pictures?" "Yes, ma'am. With what looks like a standard civilian imaging device." Vex'thara closed her primary eyes and engaged in what her meditation instructor had called deep breathing exercises for existential crisis management. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. A human civilian had just outrun military equipment, treated the experience as a warm-up routine, and was now conducting what appeared to be a professional security assessment of their classified installation. "Commander," Zarakai said, her voice carrying the careful tone of someone delivering news that would make a black hole seem cheerful, "an incoming priority transmission from Galactic intelligence." The main screen flickered to life, revealing Director Thex Mori, whose expression suggested he was having the kind of day that made people question the fundamental nature of reality. His usually immaculate uniform looked like it had been through several small wars, and his tentacles were coiled in what experienced personnel recognized as the extreme bureaucratic stress position. "Commander Vex'thara," he began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just discovered that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. "I'm looking at your situation report, and I'm having some difficulty understanding how a single human has managed to compromise our entire reconnaissance operation." "Well, sir, it's a complex situation involving what appears to be a species-wide conspiracy to hide their actual physical capabilities. species-wide conspiracy. Director Thex Mori's tone suggested he was experiencing the same reality-questioning process that had been making everyone's day so special. Are you suggesting that humans have been deliberately misrepresenting their abilities? It would appear so, sir. Either that, or our intelligence-gathering methods are fundamentally flawed. Commander, Scout Vex'thara's voice interrupted. We've reached the target zone. The human is. He's waving at us. Waving. Yes, I am. In what appears to be a friendly gesture, Director Thex Mori's image flickered with what could only be described as administrative confusion. Commander, are you telling me that this human has just completed what amounts to a military-grade infiltration exercise and is now greeting your scouts like they're old friends? That would be an accurate assessment, sir. And he's still not showing signs of fatigue? Negative, sir. If anything, he appears to be enjoying himself. The director's expression shifted through several stages of what could only be described as professional bewilderment management. Commander, I want to speak with this human, sir. Establish communication. I need to understand what we're dealing with here. Understood, sir. Scout Vex'thara, can you establish communication with the human? Already on it, Commander. He's approaching our position, and he's smiling. Of course he's smiling. Because apparently casual infiltration of alien military installations was just another fun activity for humans. Patch him through. The communication link crackled, and suddenly Marcus Webb's face appeared on screen. He looked exactly like someone who had just completed a pleasant morning jog instead of a high-speed pursuit across hostile terrain. His breathing was steady, his expression cheerful, and he appeared to be enjoying what most species would consider a deeply traumatic experience. "Hello there," he said, his voice carrying the kind of casual friendliness that made the entire situation even more surreal. "Beautiful morning for a run, isn't it?" Director Thex Mori's tentacles coiled tighter. "Mr. Webb." "I presume." "That's right." "And you are?" Director Thex Mori. "Galactic Intelligence." "Mr. Webb, I need to ask you some questions about your activities this morning." "Sure thing." "Great workout, by the way. Your scouts really pushed me to maintain a good pace. I haven't had a training run that challenging in weeks." "Training run." The director repeated the words like they contained the secret to understanding the fundamental nature of the universe. "You consider outpacing military reconnaissance equipment to be a training exercise?" "Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't really trying to outrun anybody. I was just going for my usual morning distance. The fact that your guys were following me actually made it more interesting." "Your usual morning distance?" 50 kilometers, give or take. I'm training for the Trans-Sahara Ultra next month, so I've been trying to build up my endurance base. Dr. Blim'shar's voice crackled through the comm, sounding like someone who had just watched their understanding of biology get fed through a meat grinder. "Mr. Webb, did you say Trans-Sahara Ultra?" "Yeah, it's a fun little race. 250 kilometers across the desert should be a good challenge." 250 kilometers. Dr. Blim'shar's voice carried the hollow quality of someone who had just discovered that everything he thought he knew about mammalian physiology was wrong. "Across a desert. Well, you know what they say. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you." Commander Vex'thara found herself staring at the screen with the kind of fascination usually reserved for watching reality itself malfunction. This human, this impossible creature, was casually discussing running distances that would challenge military vehicles, and he was treating it like a hobby. "Mr. Webb," she said, her voice carrying the careful tone of someone trying to maintain professional composure while questioning the fundamental laws of physics, "are you aware that you've just infiltrated a classified military installation?" "Oh, is that what this is?" Marcus looked around with the kind of casual interest someone might show when discovering an interesting rock formation. "I just followed my usual running route. I didn't realize I'd wandered into anything classified." "Your usual running route takes you through restricted military zones." "Well, I like to explore new trails. Keeps things interesting. Plus, the terrain here is fantastic for hill training." "Hill training?" "Yeah, you know, building leg strength, improving cardiovascular efficiency, that sort of thing." The elevation changes around here are perfect for interval work. Director Thex Mori's image flickered with what appeared to be the visual equivalent of a system error. Mr. Webb, do you understand the implications of what you've just accomplished? Not really, no. I mean, I had a good workout, met some interesting people, got some nice photos of the local wildlife. Seems like a pretty successful morning to me. You outran military reconnaissance equipment. Oh, those hoverbikes? Yeah, they're pretty fast. Must be fun to ride. You jumped across a 40-meter river. The water looked clean. Might be a good spot for a swim after a long run. You're not even breathing hard. Well, 50 kilometers is pretty standard for me. I usually do my long runs on weekends, but I had some free time this morning. The communication link fell silent, except for the sound of several military careers quietly questioning their life choices. Marcus Webb, meanwhile, continued to smile with the kind of cheerful enthusiasm that made the entire situation even more incomprehensible. Mr. Webb, Director Thex Mori said finally, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just realized that the universe had a sense of humor. Would you be interested in discussing some employment opportunities? Employment opportunities? Yes, we may have some positions available that would utilize your particular skill set. What kind of positions? Well, we're always looking for qualified personnel in our reconnaissance division. Marcus's smile widened. Would there be opportunities for travel, extensive travel? Yes, and challenging terrain? Very challenging terrain. Sounds interesting. Do you have a business card? And that, Commander Vex'thara realized, was how the Galactic Reconnaissance Division accidentally recruited its first human operative. Not through careful selection and rigorous testing, but because someone had decided to go for a morning jog and happened to outrun military equipment in the process. The universe, it seemed, still had a few surprises left, and apparently they all involved humans treating impossible physical feats as casual entertainment. As she watched Marcus Webb exchange contact information with Director Thex Mori while casually performing stretching exercises, Vex'thara made a mental note to request a complete review of all intelligence files on humanity. Something told her they were going to need it.